Guardian is by no means any exception. I mean, look, right. I don't know who Andrew Liu is. Andrew Liu or Leo or Liu. I did try to like research him because apparently he's written a book, but there isn't that much about him online. So I don't know who this geezer is. I can't like. There's not much I can insights into what he is, whether he is some sort of fucking propaganda mouthpiece or whatever. But this is they're still trying to sell this shit months later. Blaming China for coronavirus isn't just dangerous; it misses the point. All right, okay, maybe in these times we shouldn't be blaming anybody. But this is where it gets choppy, and this is where you see Chinese misinformation being spread openly by a British newspaper, which is essentially, I don't know what you could say. It's a fucking disgrace. That's what it is. It's a fucking disgrace. So, actually, this pandemic is a creature of capitalist globalization, not any single country. Chinese culture is a convenient scapegoat. Okay, well, let's break this down for a second. Okay, before this gets too crazy. It's not just the Chinese culture of eating weird animals that people have a problem with. We're kind of past all that. The bat suit meme was months ago. People are talking about pangolins now. Now it's kind of come out, some weird experiments going on in a laboratory involving bats with blood flying everywhere, like the beginning of a fucking horror film. These are the kind of things that people are concerned about now. The whole... I don't know why they're bringing this up again now. Okay. Why? Okay. When people are talking about China, we're not talking about the Chinese anymore, as we shouldn't be. We're talking about the Communist Party. Okay, right. That's why people are calling it the CCP virus now. Do you get it? For politicians in the US and Western Europe seeking to distract from their own disastrous mismanagement of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, as I read that first line, I can't help but feel blood boil within me. Like, when you're real angry and you're just like... Have you ever got so angry with a toaster you've headbutted it until it's broken to pieces? I never have, but I've done it to other machines, so you might know what I'm saying. Listen to this bullshit. For politicians in the US and Western Europe seeking to distract from their own disastrous mismanagement. Okay. Let's not forget the disastrous mismanagement of the Chinese government. The disastrous advice given to the world by the World Ho Organization because their rich daddy had kicked a dildo so far up their fucking ass they don't even know how to think straight anymore. Can we just acknowledge these aspects? You want to talk about disastrous mismanagement and the spread of propaganda. This is in the Guardian. I mean, the Guardian have done some egregious things over the last few years. I mean, look, the Daily Mail are terrible. They've been making everyone so scared that there's probably some people who've chopped their own heads off at this point, or poured cement into their nose so they don't breathe anymore, so they don't contract the virus. But the Guardian, their official propaganda piece for a foreign government, a tyrannical foreign government, right now. That's all I can gather from this so far. That's horrendous. Well, who the fuck up? Like, where do you get off? Do you know what I mean? You spreading. Look at the people that keep spreading and the continuation of the narrative of Russian influence, the pantomime villains of planet Earth. These are the fucking... You want to talk about using the terms enemy of the people? What the fuck is this? I mean, totally serious. I'm trying to make jokes and shit, but like, this is a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace. And I would implore anybody who has been affected by this whole debacle, to turn your attention where it should be turned to. Have Western governments been a bit poo about this? Yes. But also, the people have been very poo about it as well, because no one can take any fucking responsibility for themselves. Because the nanny state. The state has turned you all into babies. You know, I read the article, the people that were repatriated to the UK from Bolivia, like, oh, but no one told us whether we should self-quarantine or not. Can you not make decisions for yourself, you fucking child? What is the matter with you? Oh, God, should I continue this? It's upsetting me a little. It's triggering me a little. That's all right. Okay, the beauty of blaming China lies in its ambiguity. Are critics merely condemning the way of the Communist Party? Yes. Concealed information during those crucial January weeks. Both liberals and conservatives in the US, including Donald Trump, have used this defense. Or is the clear subtext that the real culprits are the Chinese people and their exotic culture and habits? Right, there's nothing exotic about eating bats and pangolins. It's not very exotic. Exotic is flavours, An explosion of exotic flavour. A durian fruit. Not the ingredients for Grot Bags' breakfast. Anyway, leave it to Nigel Farage to clumsily play both sides, claiming both that he held no ill will against the Chinese people, but the problem lay with the appalling hygiene conditions in Chinese wildlife markets. Yes, and the customary diets of bats and pangolins. Whatever the intentions, we now see how criticisms of China have translated into an upsurge of racist violence aimed at the Chinese and Asian diaspora living in the US, Western Europe, and Oceania. How many actual incidents have you heard of that have been that fucking bad? And if you want to talk about tit for tat, well, let's bring it back to what I was talking about earlier, about the persecution of anyone who isn't Chinese going on in China right now. With the countless Africans have been turfed out of their fucking homes with nowhere to go because they say that they're carrying coronavirus. The fact that a lot of Westerners aren't allowed in restaurants or in hospitals. Okay, do you think Western countries do that to people? As you could be the biggest fucking left-leaning social justice lunatic going, and you're going to realise that no, that doesn't happen. Okay, this is complete nonsense. They're still trying to spin this narrative of criticisms towards China as having underlying racist undertones. That's absolutely insane. Are you insane? Are you fucking mad? What is the matter with you? What? Anyway, let's carry on. I applaud the liberal condemnation of these attacks as xenophobic, but also worry that vague cries of tolerance for Chinese people and culture play into the racist framing of the right, in which we wind up debating identity and difference at the expense of dynamic historical processes. Any serious attempt to grapple with China's role in the pandemic must also consider the specific political economic conditions of China's ascent within the global market in recent years, which facilitated the virus's spread as well as planting the seeds for an Euro-American backlash. I don't think that's proper grammar. Let's take the claim that the novel coronavirus was caused by a culturally peculiar fondness for eating pangolins. Though it is true that pangolin scales and meat are advertised as a sort of folk medicine in mainland China, statistics suggest the real key variable are the effects of globalization. Wow, I just feel like I've been slapped round the face by a fish covered in chloroform. Oh, what the fuck is going on here? So let's take the claim that it was caused by a peculiar fondness for eating pangolins. But statistics suggest the key variable are the effects of globalization. Oh, wow. Okay. So I see. Right. Which have enriched the country's business classes. Nice try, dickhead. Prices of the animal have climbed from $14 a kilo in 1994 to more than $600 today, while illegal shipments confiscated at the border regularly exceed 10 tons. Customers ordering wildlife often do so in order to flaunt their wealth or to celebrate a good day on the stock market, although they remain a minority. Most Chinese citizens support strict limits, if not a ban, on wildlife consumption. Resurgent pangolin consumption is thus a result of economic liberalization in China, which the US championed, not simply of traditional culture. Oh, wow. How could you turn this all to be an anti-capitalist message amongst all this? When from what I've heard is, now forgive me if I'm wrong on this, but like there was a famine in China in the 70s and 60 million people died because of communism? I don't know. That's quite a lot, isn't it? And then because there was no food, they lifted restrictions on the import of, and the consumption of exotic animals. And there's the old saying, I believe, that the sun can shine on its back, you can eat it. If it has 4 legs and the sun shines on its back, you can eat it. Something like that. That doesn't count toddlers, by the way. Babies. You know what I'm saying? And because of the horrors of communism and socialism, that years and years later, people have got into this habit of consuming bats and pangolins, and therefore have maybe contracted that disease, even though actually what people are saying is that this experiment's going on in a laboratory in Wuhan is actually the cause of it. So why are we even still talking about this about the theory that is now being poo-pooed in favour of some weird experimentations going on with fucking bats? I don't know. Maybe it's a distraction. Oh, my God. Yes, of course. Oh, forgive me. But I didn't know capitalism was responsible for the communist famine that was caused in the 70s. I didn't know that. Fucking hell, I must have sniffed way too much glue for breakfast, Well, fancy that. And most Chinese support strict limits, if not a ban on wildlife consumption. Yeah, so the consumption of pangolins is because of filthy capitalists wanting to flaunt their wealth by eating something that looks absolutely revolting. Of course. Right. I see. It was these same economic forces that also hastened the spread of the virus overseas. Oh, really? Wuhan, where the virus originated, originally served as a hub between coastal metropolises such as Guangzhou, Shanghai, and inland China. Although considered a second-tier city, even Wuhan has been caught up in the latest phase of globalization as capital pursues cheaper land and labor markets inland. During February and March, cases of the novel coronavirus illuminated economic linkage long hidden from view, such as Chinese investments into infrastructure in Iran, ties between Wuhan's car parts industry and factories in Serbia, South Korea, and Germany. The coronavirus may have first appeared in China, but the ensuing spread and crisis also belonged to the global assemblage of commerce, tourism, and supply chains erected by powerful interests in the 21st century. Oh, so it's everyone's fault for wanting to explore the world and other cultures. Oh, I see. This is interesting that this is in a Guardian article that's very pro-China. So what you're saying is an end to globalization and closing all borders. Is that what you're saying? I see. Okay, right. The great irony of blaming some vague notion of Chinese culture is that the best responses to the pandemic have come from the ethnic Chinese majority governments of Taiwan. Yes. Right, I see what you're trying to do there. Make Taiwan and China the same thing. Yes, they aren't ethnically Chinese, but China and Taiwan are separate nations. That's what most people understand, except certain people. So, what the fuck are you trying to say? And it goes on about Singapore and Hong Kong. Yes, their responsible policies were due largely to the trauma of the 2003 SARS epidemic, but also have to do with the history of robust welfare states in East Asia. What? Which, unlike Europe and the US, have increasingly invested in healthcare infrastructures to deal with precisely such cries. Yeah, well, explain Vietnam then, bitch, because they're doing pretty fucking well too. Okay, to push back on the anti-China line is not to apologize or defend the state's actions. Oh, I'm glad to hear it. It is clear that local officials were wrong to silence Dr. Li Wenliang. Now, this is very interesting, because I've been following this for a very long time, and I've been following people that are experts in China. I knew how this was going to play out fucking months ago. And what they did was, now this is all out there. Don't just take my word for it. Is that they used the Wuhan officials as a scapegoat because it was the Chinese government that called it the Wuhan virus in the first place. Not the Chinese virus, not the coronavirus, the Wuhan virus. So therefore they call it the Wuhan virus. So you think of Wuhan, that's where the virus comes from. And they threw everybody under the bus that was in charge of Wuhan. Everybody. Held them responsible. That's the narrative they sold. To blame it all on the local officials of Wuhan. Not the state, not the whole state as a whole, just Wuhan. And in this article, they are trying to establish that lie. They're trying to reinforce that narrative all these months later. Astonishing. It is clear that local officials were wrong to silence Dr. Li Wenliang, a fucking hero who was dead, who alerted friends about the virus as early as possible, and that the government has consistently downplayed the virus's contagiousness and the severity of deaths. Oh, so you have mentioned the government again. But is the contrast between authoritarian and democratic regimes so stark, as Western ideologies allege? Most observers agree that China covered up the crisis of Wuhan for 3 weeks in January, and this lost time probably decided the difference between a local versus a global epidemic. Nevertheless, it is still sobering to read reports that even from mid-January, other governments took even longer to respond. The UK dragged its feet for an interminable 8 weeks, and the US ignored clear warning signs for 70 days. Well, no, they banned flights in from China and called racist, as far as I can remember. And Taiwan banned flights, and Vietnam banned flights. Because you know why they did that? Because they said, fuck your feelings, we don't want our people to die. This inactivity was partly the product of Western exceptionalism that believed viruses and epidemics only happen over there, in poor and non-white countries. No, it happens in China, which is an exceptionally rich country, so I don't think that's something that people believe. They just think that, let's face facts. We've been told about bird flu, SARS, swine flu. Alright, I know that's from the other side. Remember all these Ebola, all these diseases that start out in wacky places, and then it never happens, and it never reaches the UK. There's never a massive pandemic outside of certain regions. That's why. Because it's always like, yeah, bullshit, not this again. Because of the fear factors, because the fear tactics stirred up by the fucking media that has numbed us to all this fucking shit. So if you're going to blame anyone, don't blame the government. Don't blame the people, blame the media. And the World Health Organization and the Chinese government. Right, this is a crucial point for challenging anti-Asian racism. Rather than debate the blame game, as Justice's Global Director Tobita Chow has written, we should point out how short-sighted nationalist perspectives have produced facially ineffective responses. No, that's bullshit. Nationalist perspectives. Vietnam said, fuck everyone else, it's about our nation. Doing well. Taiwan. Fuck everyone else, it's about our nation. Doing well. Close the borders. Doing well. Fuck what other countries think. Doing well. Doing well. Wait, is it? During Italy's worst weeks, officials admitted they initially viewed the Wuhan crisis as a science fiction movie that had nothing to do with us. In the US, a Kansas politician stated that his town was safe because it only had a few Chinese residents. Yes, these people are all idiots, but you're an idiot too. You're all idiots. And, as I was saying earlier in the stream, I just want to see the data on how many idiots are dying from coronavirus, and is it just a higher percentage of idiots that are dying? And I'm going to put money on that you being one of them. In Philadelphia, in a more tragic offshoot of racial thinking, rumors circulated that the virus could not infect black Americans because it was a Chinese disease. Now, what are you trying to say about the black community exactly? Ultimately, both the pandemic and the accompanying anti-Asian backlash are dynamics that go beyond the question of culture and xenophobia, carrying serious life and death consequences. Both are indirect byproducts of China's emergence as a major force in global capitalism, not only forgiving the supply chains and travel networks that conveyed the virus, but also threatening Euro-America's centuries-long economic and political prestige. In the US, such fears were already manifest in populist claims that China alone, and not the domestic political and business class, was to blame for the loss of manufacturing jobs. Well, globalization did sell it all out. In the wake of a referendum result seen as a vote against globalization, anxieties in the UK have recently been manifest in a panic over Huawei providing the country's 5G network. Well, there are legitimate concerns about Huawei, isn't there? Let's face facts. Fears, forget the 5G network, but Huawei, yes. Oh, fears over China were not created by coronavirus, but find in it a most apt metaphor as a global and invisible force of destruction. What? It follows that these dangerous sentiments will not automatically disappear when a vaccine is created unless we demand more than liberal appeals for tolerance. We need to also recognize and confront the political, economic forces behind the West anti-China backlash and the inadequacy of nationalism in responding to the social and public health crisis facing us today, which are on a global scale. The inadequacy of nationalism. Well, no, it wasn't the inadequacy of nationalism. It was the lack of implementation of nationalism that caused the fucking problem. Don't you think? Just look at the examples of the people who just went, fuck the world, we're saving ourselves. And, the anti-China backlash. Do you know why there's anti-Chinese sentiment? If you need to ask yourself why there is, just look at the scoreboard. Just look at everything that's been going on, and ask yourself why do people have an aversion towards China right now, and for the past few years. Just look at everything that's happened. And you're like, well, why is everyone like this? It's like, are you fucking mental? Have you ever done business? Have you ever engaged? Like, what the fuck? That's why I put it, I would straight up say that this is, it's not full-blown in-your-face propaganda, but this is the constant pushing of that narrative that these authoritarian fucking regimes want pushed across the world, being helped spread by the Guardian, because it's all part of the same thing. No, it's the first tactic they go to. They don't accept responsibility for their actions, and then they go after other people, blaming it on them, saying, no, it's their fault, they're racist, they're mean to us, it's such a Chinese tactic to blame foreigners and call them xenophobic. It's a very Chinese tactic. What can I say? I've experienced it my fucking self. Like, what do you want from me? I mean, not to tell the truth? It's the lack of telling truth that has gone on here, and to turn around and start blaming other governments for the stupidity of most people. And yes, I would say in the Western world, in Europe, there's been a certain amount of arrogance that they're paying the price for that arrogance. But at the same time, they're going, I mean, China covered it up, but the UK was kicking its heels for 8 weeks anyway, so what does it matter? It's like, what does it fucking matter? Transparency. We were told it wasn't even, at that point in time, we were told there wasn't human-to-human fucking transmission. You remember that shit? Shame on you.